technically the gates, but it's talking about all the cities which the Lord your God has given to you throughout your tribes. And they are to judge the people with righteous judgment, or fairly, equitably. And it's further defined by saying, you are not to pervert justice, nor are you to regard faces. In other words, take into account appearances, judge by appearances. And you are not to take bribes or accept bribes, because the bribe, this is an interesting description, the bribe clouds the eyes of even the wise, and it skews or distorts the words of the righteous. And just to make sure we got it, comes the command: righteousness or justice. Justice, you are to pursue, run after, actively move toward. Striking texts. Sometimes we forget, the texts remind us, because we do, that this business that we're in of relationship with God isn't just all about me and God. It is about us and God, but it's also about me and others, and not just the others within this wall, or these walls, but the others outside. And that applies not only to us and to the judges and the officials, or however you want to title these two particular kinds of offices, but a little later in the reading, it's to apply to the king as well. And in fact, God says, when there comes a time that you want a king for yourself, here's what the king gets to do. He is to read the Torah on a yearly basis, to make sure that what he does is also tzedek, tirdof, from the top down. And then comes a very striking text, the one that will be read to you, that is sort of forward-looking. God says to the people, through Moses, I will raise up a prophet like you, like Moses, for the people, whom the people will come to follow. In fact, they better follow him. What is striking about that text is the Haftorah text that is related to it this week. It's a wonderful chapter of Isaiah 52. And among other things, that text says that God will restore the broken down cities. He will rebuild them yet again, because Isaiah was writing to a time period just before that would take place, and he's saying, after that takes place, look forward to this. And then he says, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Interesting term. Those of you who are familiar with your Hebrew know what that term is. It is a term from which Yeshua is derived. And then the text concludes, the Haftorah does, with a very significant phrase: the Lord will go before you. In other words, he'll prepare the pathway for you. And then it concludes by saying, and the God of Israel will be your defending rear guard. Those of you who've been here long enough are familiar with the fact that that is the exact translation of the name God gave, or pardon me, of the name Jacob. So it says, may the God of Israel be your Jacob. Not like going before you, but you be your defending rear guard. And we might ask, how would that take place? Well, you start by reading the next set of verses, which is the introduction to Isaiah 53. It's Isaiah 52, 13 to 15. That's the ultimate answer to how God will take care of us. That's not the only way, but it is, therefore, the answer to who is that prophet to come. Pay careful attention as the text is read, and may we all learn from it and profit from it.
Reading from Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 22. Instead, he will raise up for you a prophet like me, an Israeli, a man to whom you must listen and whom you must obey. For this is what you yourselves did with God at Mount Horeb. This is the foot of the mountain you did, that you might not terrifying voice of God again, or see the awesome fire on the mountain, lest you die. All right, the Lord said to me, I will do as they would have requested. I will raise up from among them a prophet, an Israeli like you. I will tell him what to say, and he shall be my spokesman to the people. I will personally deal with anyone who will not listen to him and heed his messages from me. But any prophet who falsely claims that his message is from me shall die, and any prophet who claims to give a message from other gods must die. If you wonder how shall we know whether the prophet is from the Lord or not, this is the way to know. If the thing he prophesies doesn't happen, it is not the Lord who has given him the message. He has made it up himself. You have nothing to fear from him.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and life everlasting planted in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, the giver of the Torah.
He is in fact the giver of the Torah. These words come directly from him. They were passed on to us by the hand of Moses, and that's the acknowledgement that we all now share in. Pages 98 and 99 of the Zohar Torah. If you need the transliteration, it's page 95.
V'zot haTorah asher sama Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai be'yad Moshe. This is the Torah which Moses placed before the children of Israel. It is in accord with the Lord's command by the hand of Moses.
You may be seated.
I'll be reading Nehemiah 1 through 11. The autobiography of Nehemiah, the son of Hakala. In December of the 20th year of the reign of King Artaxerxes of Persia, when I was at the palace at Shushan, one of my fellow Jews named Hanini came to visit me with some men who had arrived from Judah. I took the opportunity to inquire about how things were going in Jerusalem. How are they getting along? I asked. The Jews who returned to Jerusalem from the exile here. Well, they replied, things are not good. The wall of Jerusalem is still torn down and the gates are burned. When I heard this, I sat down and cried. In fact, I refused to eat for several days, for I spent the time in prayer to the Lord God of heaven. O Lord God, I cried out, O great and awesome God, who keeps his promises and is so loving and kind to those who love and obey him, hear my prayer. Listen carefully to what I have to say. Look down and see me praying night and day for your people Israel. I confess that we have sinned against you. Yes, I and my people have committed the horrible sin of not obeying the commandments you gave us through your servant Moses. Oh, please remember what you told Moses. You said, if you sin, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my laws, even though you are exiled to the furthest corners of the universe, I will bring you back to Jerusalem. For Jerusalem is the place in which I have chosen to live. We are your servants, the people who you rescued by your great power. O Lord, please hear my prayer. Heed the prayers of those who deliver us, who delight to honor you. Please help me now as I go in and ask the king for a great favor. Put it into his heart to be kind to me. I was the king's cupbearer.
God's words are intended to impact our lives, to transform us, to renew our days as of old, as Eitz Chaim reminds us on pages 96 and 97, because the word is intended to be like a tree that takes root in our lives. Hence, Eitz Chaim, tree of life.
Es Chaim hi la kazima ve'tom keha me'ushar erakeha darakei noam ve'chol tivoteha Hashivenu Adonai Elecha Shuva Kadesh Yameinu Ekedem Hashivenu Adonai Elecha Shuva Kadesh Yameinu Ekedem. Tree of life it is to those who take hold of it, and happy are those who support it. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Turn us, Lord, to you, and let us return. Renew our days as of old.
On pages 98 and 99, Uvnu Kol Yomar reminds us of yet another experience that our ancestors had, being in the presence of God. We've come into his presence, so we stand in his presence, and hopefully, having been renewed, we can function effectively as his priests, responding in joy and in love. Pages 98 and 99.
Uvnu Kol Yomar Shuva Adonai Ribavot Alfei Yisrael. When the ark rested, Moses would say, Return, O Lord, to the myriads of Israel's families. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and your mighty ark. Clothe your priests with righteousness. May those who have experienced your faithful love shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, don't delay the return of your Messiah. Ba'avur David Abdecha, al tashev penei v'shekach. Ki lekach tov natati lachem. I give you good instruction. Do not forsake